Welcome back for Keeper of the Lost Cities Nightfall chapters 4 and 5. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Chapter 4. Getting her sister to agree to Alden's arrangements turned out to be an even bigger challenge than getting her to understand where they were and why she'd forgotten that Sophie existed. But, exhausting as both conversations were, Sophie also had to give her sister credit. She'd always thought of her as a kind of crybaby, quick to tattle and whine and play for sympathy. But there was steel in her sister's posture, ice in her eyes. Her sister might have looked small in a giant canopy bed, and out of place in her wrinkled t-shirt among all the jeweled pillows and intricate crystal chandeliers. But she wasn't intimidated by her flashy surroundings, and she wasn't afraid of the things Sophie was describing either. Not that her determination would matter against villains like Neverseen. Involving her would be like bringing a snarling bunny into a den of hyenas. The fifth time their argument circled back to the beginning, Sophie decided to try a visual demonstration. She held her half-empty bottle of youth in front of her and concentrated on the base, imagining her mental energy crawling inside the glass and buzzing around like a swarm of bees. The longer she let the force hum, the more the power swelled until the bottle exploded into a shimmering powder, mixed with sparkles of water that rained down on the bed. That, Sophie said over her sister's screech, is called outward channeling. It's a skill that every elf has. And Gethin, the telepath who took Mom and Dad, used it to destroy an entire castle full of people. And that's only the beginning. Finton, the Neverseen's leader, is a pyrokinetic. He can snap his fingers and call down unstoppable flames called Everblaze. And the Neverseen also has a Vanisher and a Guster and a Technopath and a Shade and a Psionopath and... Am I supposed to know what any of that means? Her sister interrupted. No, but the fact that you don't proves my point. The things we're facing, you can't even imagine them, much less help fight them. I have 5 special abilities. I'm pretty sure that's more than any other elf has ever had, and the Neverseen have almost killed me a bunch of times. Keeping your sister alive has been the greatest challenge of my career, Sandor added from the shadows. And I say that as someone who's fought ogres, as well as a band of renegade trolls. Her sister had no response to that. Honestly, Sophie didn't either. She grabbed one of the room's satin chairs and scooted it next to her sister, sinking down onto the squishy cushion. I hate to scare you. I'm not scared. The way her legs were trembling under the blankets suggested otherwise, but Sophie decided not to mention it. Okay, fine. I also know how it feels to be told to sit back while everyone does all the important stuff, Sophie said quietly. But this is something you can't help with. It's too big, too complicated, and you're too human. The words hit her sister harder than Sophie expected. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, she promised. It sort of sounds like you are. Shame prickled Sophie's cheeks as she realized her sister was right. All this time around elves had made her pick up some of their snobbiness. I'm sorry. I just meant these problems belong to my world. It's not your job to deal with them. Her sister became very interested in dusting the specks of powdered glass off the bed. What? Sophie asked. Don't you already know what I'm thinking? I would if I weren't blocking you. Human thoughts are allowed. Plus, telepaths have to follow rules to respect people's privacy. Is that what's bothering you? You think I'm eavesdropping? No. She looped her hair around her finger so tightly the end of her finger turned purple. I guess I just thought the one good thing I was going to get out of this nightmare was having my sister back. But you're an elf. You have a goblin bodyguard. You live in a bunch of cities that are supposed to be myths, and you talk about humans like you think we're the biggest losers ever. I don't think you're the biggest losers ever, I swear. What I said before came out wrong. Sophie reached for her sister's hand. relieved when she didn't flinch away. And you did get your sister back. Why do you think I'm trying so hard to protect you? I don't need your protection. She definitely did. But Sophie knew saying that wasn't going to help anything. So she went with a different kind of honesty. The thing is, you didn't remember me until today. And I know that wasn't your fault. But all this time, I've still remembered you. I miss you guys so much that I had to stop myself from thinking about you. Maybe if I hadn't done that, maybe if I'd checked on you more often. She didn't finish that sentence, but her sister must have guessed. It's not your fault that Mom and Dad were taken, she told Sophie. It is and it isn't. If it weren't for me, the Neverseen wouldn't have known any of you existed, and I may not have asked the Black Swan to make me this way, but I've still made my own choices. Sophie fidgeted with her monocle, her reminder that she'd accepted her role as Moonlark voluntarily. I can't let anything happen to you, she said quietly. I could never live with that guilt. I promise I'll check in, and you can hail me anytime you want. Just please say you'll stay here in Atlantis where it's safe. I finally have you back. I can't lose you again. Her sister sighed. You'll tell me anything I want to know? Unless you ask something I don't have the answer to. But then I'll try to find out. Her sister chewed her lip, leaving teeth marks so deep they looked ready to bleed. Then I want the whole story. The one you promised me earlier. I want to know what you've been doing all this time, and why you have a bodyguard, and why these Neverseen people keep coming after you. You realize that's a really long story, right? Sophie asked. Her sister shrugged and scooted over on the bed, patting the space she'd cleared beside her. Sophie was pretty sure she'd never sat that close to her sister when they lived together. But as she settled under the blankets, her sister rested her head on her shoulder, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Sandor brought over the tray of Malamelt for them, and Sophie handed her sister a slice of the chocolatey, butterscotchy goodness. This isn't like fairy food, is it? She asked, poking the cake with her fork. I'll still be able to eat normal food afterwards? Sophie laughed. Of course, though you might find other desserts disappointing. Her sister poked it a few more times before taking a tiny bite. Her eyes stretched wide. Okay, this is the best thing I've ever put in my mouth. I know, Sophie said with a grin. One slice is never enough. It won't be, her sister agreed, snatching the other plate. That one's mine, Sophie reminded her. She shrugged. You won't have time to eat it anyhow. You have a long story to tell. Fine. Sophie tugged on her eyelashes as she tried to figure out where to start. Her sister tilted her head. I remember you doing that when you were nervous. It's so weird how the memories pop back. Is that going to keep happening? Probably, whenever you find the right trigger. She nodded, going back and poking at her Malamelt. Were you the one who erased my mind? No, I actually don't know who did it, or how they do it. They call them the Washers. I guess they're specifically trained for that. That's creepy. Sophie wished she could deny it. Are they going to do it to me again? Her sister whispered. The best answer Sophie could give her was, I hope not. That's why I'm telling you all of this. Maybe, if you show them you can keep our secrets, it'll convince them you can handle it. Then get back to the story, her sister commanded, taking another bite of cake. And start at the beginning. I want to know how you found out you're an elf in the first place. I'm betting that was a weird day. Sophie nestled back against the pillows. It was, and it all started with a field trip, a giant dinosaur model, and an especially noticeable pair of teal eyes. Chapter 5. Sophie hadn't planned on sharing so much, but her sister kept asking questions, so they covered everything from her being adopted by Grady and Edeline to the craziness of going to Foxfire and living at Havenfield. Her sister couldn't believe that dinosaurs weren't extinct, and she hadn't been able to stop laughing when Sophie described the antics of her troublesome pet imp named Iggy. But her favorite stories were the ones about the incredibly rare alicorns, and how Sylvanie and Greyfell were going to have a baby. Both slices of Malamute were gone by that point, and Sophie told her sister about custard bursts and rippled puffs and cinnacream and starkflower stew, and how the gnomes grew all kinds of bizarrely colored vegetables that tasted like pizza and cheeseburgers and other delicious things. Gnomes, her sister repeated. So, all fantasy creatures are real? Not all of them, but a lot, and they're not like the stories people tell. Like how your ears aren't pointy? Her sister asked, licking every last crumb on her plate. Or wait, are they? She tried to pull aside Sophie's hair, and Sophie swatted her hand. They're not, though I guess they will be if I live long enough to be ancient. How old is ancient? Her sister nearly choked when Sophie explained about the elves' indefinite lifespan. Gnomes live a really long time too, she added, trying to make it sound more normal. They're like trees. They even have green thumbs and green teeth, and can sing to plants. And dwarves are kind of like kid-sized moles, with pointed noses and shaggy fur and squinty eyes because they spend so much time underground. Wow. The world is really strange. You have no idea. Trolls age in reverse, and Sandor has a secret girlfriend. Sandor shot her a glare that could have withered flowers. What? Sophie asked. Who's she going to tell? Sandor muttered something about respect for privacy. Anything else weird about you? Her sister asked. Sophie snorted. Where do I even begin? She described each of her special abilities in detail. Telepath, teleporter, polyglot, inflictor, enhancer. And she showed her sister more of the skills every elf had, like levitating, and telekinesis, and channeling energy into her muscles to make her stronger or faster. When she was done stalling, she finally explained about Project Moonlark, and all the times she and her friends had nearly lost their lives. Even though she glossed over the gory details and emphasized that the elves' medicine could treat pretty much anything, it still led to the question of whether anyone had actually died. And every name cut away another sliver of Sophie's heart. Jolie, Counselor Kenrick, Calla, Mr. Forkel. I don't know how you made it through all of that, her sister whispered. Sometimes Sophie didn't either, but she knew her sister needed hope. So she leaned her head against hers and whispered, the same way we're both going to get through this. One day at a time, one problem at a time. Each tiny bit of progress slowly adds up to something big. But we're fighting an evil organization, and they have ogres. You have goblins, Sandor reminded her, unsheathing his massive sword and slashing it so fast the black blade was nothing more than a blur. I can assure you, we're the better allies. The ogres also don't seem to be working with the Neverseen anymore, Sophie added. King Dimitar signed a new treaty at the Peace Summit that basically said he'd leave us alone if we left him alone. Assuming he wasn't lying, so he could carry on his warmongering without anyone watching, Sandor grumbled, ignoring Sophie's "that's not helping" glare. There are also the ogre rebels to consider, assuming they truly are rebels and not another of Dimitar's tricks. My adoptive parents were attacked a few weeks ago, Sophie reluctantly explained, while shooting Sandor a look that said, I will yell at you later. But it was only a small band of ogres, and most of them were taken down in the fight. How can you say that like it's not a huge deal? Her sister asked. It was. Grady's goblin bodyguard had been killed in the skirmish, but Sophie was trying to keep her sister calm, so she said, because even if there are ogre rebels to worry about, they're working with the Neverseen, so that's what we need to focus on. It's like fighting a monster. No matter how many claws and fangs it has, if you chop off its head, you win. Unless it's a hydra, her sister argued. Those aren't real, Sophie told her. At least, I don't think they are. I haven't heard anyone mention them yet. but I'm still trying to learn it all myself." Her sister sighed. "I just wish I understood why this is happening. I still have no clue what these never-seen people actually want." That was probably because Sophie had no idea either. The Never-Seen had started out following something that Keith's mom had called the Lodestar Initiative. But Sophie had never been actually able to figure out what the plan involved. And it might not even matter, because when Fenton took over, he shifted the Never-Seen's focus to something he'd vaguely called his vision, which seemed to have something to do with breaking an unidentified prisoner out of the dungeon at Luminaria. He'd also brought Keith to the human cities and made him use his ability as an empath to make a list of personality traits he'd called Criterion. But Sophie had no idea how any of that was tied together or what their ultimate goal was. "All you need to know," she told her sister, "is that I'm going to stop them. I was made for this," which used to scare me. I used to wish I could be normal, but now I'm glad I have these abilities, because they help me fight. And I have a group of powerful friends who are always there to back me up, even when I tell them not to." Her sister snorted. "You make it sound like you're super elves. All you're missing are the capes." Sophie bit back a smile. "Actually, we do wear capes, but not because of that." Her sister stared at her like Sophie had just admitted she had a detached head. "If you think that's bad, you should see the frilly, ridiculous gowns I have to wear for anything formal," Sophie added. "The gloves are pretty weird, too," her sister noted. "They are, but I'm the only one who has to wear them. I can't turn off my ability as an enhancer, so if I don't cover my fingers, I'd enhance everyone I touched. And we're trying to keep the ability secret. Dex said he's going to see if he can make some sort of gadget to give me more control." "Was Dex the one with the teal eyes?" "No, that was Fitz." "And Fitz is your boyfriend?" Sophie nearly toppled off the bed. "No, why would you think that?" "Because you got all dreamy-eyed when you talked about him." "I did not." "You're doing it right now." Sandor sniggered from the corner, and Sophie flung a pillow at his head. "Trust me," she told her sister. "Fitz and I are friends. That's all." It was true, even if part of Sophie didn't want it to be. And even if there'd been a moment under Callus Panic's tree that she still didn't totally understand. Against her will, her mind flashed to the way his teasing smile had faded, and he had leaned in so close, it almost felt like he might... "What about the other guy?" her sister asked, interrupting the memory almost exactly the same way Keith had that day under the tree. "The one whose hand you kept holding." "That doesn't mean what you think it means," Sophie insisted. "We have to hold hands for leaping and stuff, so it's not a big deal." "Are you sure? He was looking at you pretty intense." "Because he's worried," Sophie said, as she searched for another pillow to fling at Sandor's newest round of snickers. "Keith feels like he should have figured out what his mom was up to and stopped her, especially since she tricked him into helping her in small ways. She's horrible." Sophie wasn't sure what scared her more. Imagining what Lady Gisela was going to demand in exchange for information on finding Nightfall, or the fact that she'd probably be willing to give it to her. "How's it going in here?" Livy called from the door. "Ready for a tour of this place yet? I promise it won't be as boring as it sounds." Sophie glanced at her sister, noting the way she'd pulled the covers up to her nose. "Can we have a few more minutes?" "Was that one of the people I'll be living with?" her sister whispered, after Livy's footsteps retreated down the hall. Sophie nodded. "She's really nice, and I just found out that she works with the Black Swan, so she'll probably tell you the stuff before I even know about it." "What's her ability?" her sister asked. "Anything I should be afraid of?" "Actually, I'm not sure if she's ever told me, but you don't have to be afraid. It's safe here. They're going to take super good care of you." Her sister twisted her fingers so tight it had to hurt. "It's okay to be nervous," Sophie told her. "I was terrified when Alden first brought me to Havenfield to meet Grady and Adeline. But things worked out awesome. I don't want a new family." "You aren't getting one. Quinlan and Livy are only helping until everything else is back to normal." She braced for her sister to ask questions about what normal meant. But she chose something even harder. Do you like them better than us? Your new family? Sophie sighed. There isn't a better. I love them, but I'll always love you guys too. But you let them adopt you. Well, yeah. The thing is, all the years I lived with you guys, I always knew something was off. I could feel it, even though I didn't understand what was wrong. And then Fitz brought me to the Lost Cities, and it felt like taking a deep breath for the first time. Her sister nodded. I guess I get that. But then, you're never coming home. Not to live, Sophie admitted. I belong here. But I might be able to visit sometimes, if you guys wanted me to. She couldn't really wrap her head around how that would work, how she would blend her old life and new life without everything getting tangled up, but there had to be a way. If she could convince everyone to let her family keep their memories, if they got her parents back safely. I know everything's a mess right now, she said, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I promise we'll figure it all out, okay? She waited for her sister to agree before she reached for her hands. In the meantime, I have a question. What am I supposed to call you? Amy? Natalie? Oh. She scooted down under the covers. Is it bad that I don't know? Not after everything that's happened, but you do need a name. Unless you want me to call you, Hey You, or maybe you'd rather try a title, like the doctor? She pointed to her sister's shirt. Her sister couldn't seem to smile. It's just, neither name really feels like me anymore. Well, you could always choose something new. Seconds crawled by. Amy's the name Mom and Dad chose for me, right? She asked. Yeah. Mom even told me she picked it out because it meant beloved. Her sister's eyes turned watery. Okay, Amy it is. Sophie had no idea if that was the right choice or the wrong choice, or if there even was a right and wrong in their situation, but it felt really good to call her sister by the familiar name again. So then, Amy, think you're ready to see where you'll be staying? You'll come with me? Of course. We're in this together. She helped Amy up and kept an arm wrapped around her trembling shoulders as she led her to the sitting room where the adults were waiting. Quinlan looked just as nervous as Amy. He was wringing his hands so hard so he could see his skin twisting. But Livy was all smiles, tossing her sparkly braids and declaring, There's my new best friend. Amy's timid grin faded. You okay? Sophie asked. I'm not sure. Her frown dug deeper into her cheeks as she took a long look at Livy and said, I know you. That concludes chapter 5, and I'll see you tomorrow for chapters 6 and 7.